University graduate Grace Millane is excited to take the vacation of a lifetime. A one-year solo trip around the world. But solo traveling can be a lonely endeavor, and one night, Grace goes online looking for romance and finds a handsome local suitor excited to show her around. But when the sun goes down, Grace disappears without a trace. Auckland, New Zealand. Located in the North Island of New Zealand, Auckland is the largest and most populous metropolitan city in the country. With a population of about 1.4 million people, Auckland is a world-class vacation destination with beautiful coasts, black sand beaches, lush native rainforests, and volcanic cones. On a long flight, over 18,000 kilometers away is the town of Wickford. Located in the south of Essex in England, Wickford started as an agricultural village, eventually growing to become home to approximately 33,000 people. Including Grace Millane, a young woman with a very bright future. Grace is nearing a point in her life where she is ready to start spreading her wings and getting ready for some experiences that only travel can provide.
Born on December 2nd, 1996 to parents David and Gillian, Grace is described by friends as attractive and talented.
Grace studied at the University of Lincoln and she graduated with a degree in marketing and advertising. She loves to spend her time working with the charities that she's passionate about.
One of those charities is the Little Princess Trust, which donates hair to be used in wigs for children who have cancer. Grace even cuts her own hair and donates it to the cause.
Grace graduated in September of 2018, and like so many young people after they finished school, she decided to take some time off to go traveling.
Instead of taking a simple trip, Grace is more ambitious. She saves for a 3-year trip around the world and plans to spend all that time traveling.
On October 26, 2018, Grace flies out of Heathrow Airport, bound for her first stop, Lima, Peru.
After Lima, Grace's next destination is New Zealand. Following that, she's planning on a long trip through Asia.
It's an ambitious trip for a person of Grace's age, but there is a connection between youth and boldness.
Grace arrived in New Zealand on November 20th, 2018, and she's been in contact with her family daily since she left, and it's pretty clear that she's enjoying this trip of a lifetime.
From November 21st to the 30th, 2018, Grace travels to the northern part of the island and visits Bahia and Cape Ringa. She also visits the National Museum.
After that, Grace checks into a hostel in Auckland, and she plans to just rest up a bit and spend some time enjoying the city.
As much fun as she's having exploring on her own, one of the great joys of solo traveling is the chance to meet new and interesting people.
Being an attractive young woman from somewhere else in the world, there are plenty of guys who are interested in her.
On November 30th, 2018, Grace matches with 26-year-old Jesse Kempson.
On December 1st at around 5:45 p.m., Grace meets up with a young man named Jesse. And that night she's dressed in a black dress with white sneakers.
Grace is really impressed the first time she meets Jesse. Not only is he better looking than in his photos, he says that he's the manager of an oil company.
Jesse is charming and funny, and he has no problem flirting with Grace, telling her about what a fantastic time they're going to have exploring the city.
Grace and Jesse start their night at a burger bar, and Jesse buys them 2 cocktails at 5:49 p.m.
Grace is in vacation mode, ready to party and have fun, and Jesse is more than happy to join in. One cocktail turns into many, and soon they're into the tequila.
At 7:12 p.m., Grace and Jesse leave the burger bar and head into a Mexican cafe to continue the party.
At 8:27 p.m., Jesse can be seen paying for 2 jugs of margaritas and 1 more of sangria. After that, the pair is seen heading north on Albert Street holding hands.
Grace also sends her parents a photo of their Christmas decorations along the central business district.
So at around 8:30 p.m., Grace and Jesse go to another bar, where they buy some beer, some tequila shots, and they kiss a couple times.
At some point, Grace has time to message her friend Danielle with how well the date is going. Cocktails all around, and we clicked so well, she says. She promises that she'll give Danielle all the details tomorrow.
The night carries on between the 2 young people, texting, dancing, and drinking. It's the perfect night out for some people.
At some point, Jesse invites Grace back to his place, and he just happens to live across the street. Grace accepts, and at 9:39 p.m., they walk across the street to Jesse's hotel.
For the rest of the night, there are no more messages from Grace. The next day, December 2nd, happens to be Grace's 22nd birthday. Her friends and family are surprised that she doesn't contact them.
Well, one day without contact turns into 2, which turns into 3, and then 4. And at that point, Grace's family and friends become extremely concerned. She's not one to go even a day without being in contact with them.
The only thing they know for sure at this point is that she had a night out on the town with a mystery man, all on the eve of her birthday. But the family continues to look for a simple answer. Perhaps it is nothing nefarious. Maybe it's just technology getting in the way.
As much as they don't want to, eventually Grace's family has to acknowledge that there's something very wrong. This is more than cell phone trouble. They have to call the police.
And no matter how independent she is, and how level-headed her family and friends consider her, she is still last known to be out with a stranger in a foreign country. And now, no one has heard from her. Her parents do finally break down and call the authorities halfway around the world. It's a last straw tactic, but one they know they have to make. 21-year-old recent university graduate Grace Millane left her hometown of Wickford, England, and traveled to Auckland, New Zealand, as part of an around-the-world vacation. But traveling solo inspires her to look for companionship. Which leads to a fun night out with 26-year-old Jessie Kempson in the city's central business district. The next day, Grace's parents are excited to call her to celebrate her 22nd birthday on December 1st, 2018. But it appears that Grace has gone missing.
Four days go by, and Grace's family is calling her and texting her over and over again, and without any response, they're becoming more and more frantic. This is somebody who doesn't go 24 hours without checking in with them.
Grace's family and friends take to social media to implore people, both at home and abroad, to help in the search for Grace.
They also check in at the hostel where Grace was staying, and they find she had never returned from the night before.
On December 5th, 2018, 4 days after they lost contact with Grace, the family files a missing persons report in New Zealand.
Detective Constable Alexa Bentley from the Auckland Police begins the investigation into Grace's whereabouts, and she's using social media to see if she can gain any information or find any clue as to where Grace may be.
Detective Constable Bentley also gets officers to put up posters of Grace all around Auckland.
Eventually, Detective Constable Bentley's digging turns into a lead.
Over the past few years, with the prevalence of social media being what it is, police will often revert to looking at social media feeds as a tool to check in on people's whereabouts when they need to. Well, the Auckland Police receive login information, so that enables Bentley to log into Grace's social media accounts, and she's able to read the messages between Grace and her friend Danielle from before she went missing.
Bentley can see that Grace was on a date with someone. Unfortunately, Grace never mentioned the man's name, so now the detective needs to find out who this man was.
Detective Bentley notices that there's a comment on Grace's Facebook page from an Auckland man named Jesse Kempson.
Jesse had left a comment on one of Grace's photos saying she was beautiful and radiant. This arouses the suspicions of Detective Constable Bentley. She wonders if Jesse might have more information, so she sends him a message saying she's looking for Grace and needs to talk to him.
The following morning, on December 6th, Kempson phones Detective Constable Bentley and tells her that he and Grace had met on a dating app and that they had got together on the night of November 30th. He says they spent some time at a restaurant and some bars, but that the last time he saw her was when they parted ways later that evening.
Her shift hadn't even started yet, but Detective Constable Bentley knows that Jesse is likely the last person to have seen Grace alive, so she asks him to come in that morning for an interview.
Detective Constable Bentley meets with Jesse Kempson at a hotel on Albert Street.
Bentley isn't coming in with any accusations. She just wants to know a bit more about Jesse's life and background.
Jesse Kempson is 26 years old and he was born in 1992 in the Wellington region of New Zealand.
Jesse tells the detective that he worked in sales, but as it turns out, he's currently between jobs and is living in another hotel. Hardly the oil company manager that he portrayed himself to be to Grace.
Detective Bentley presses Jesse about the night with Grace to see if he may have any memory as to where she may have gone. Jesse goes on to explain to Detective Bentley that they met on a dating app and they decided to meet downtown.
Jesse says they were getting along great and they went to the burger bar from about 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. that night.
But after dinner, Jesse claimed they both went their separate ways, and he said there was no further contact between the two. In fact, he claims that Grace must have unmatched him from the dating app.
Detective Bentley listens to Jesse's story, but soon realizes that his claims that they parted ways at 8 p.m. just doesn't add up.
Bentley had seen the messages that Grace wrote, saying what a great time they were having and how well they were getting along. So why is Jesse making it seem like it wasn't a match? The detective doesn't know whether or not Jesse's lying, but to try to ferret out the truth, she tells him that he needs to come down to the station and give a formal statement.
Jesse tells Detective Bentley that he's happy to cooperate with their investigation, but that he has to come by after his work at 4 p.m. An official statement given by a person involved in the disappearance of somebody else provides detectives with a tool to advance their investigation. The stakes change dramatically. Jesse would have to know at that point that whatever he says is entered into the official record.
When detectives begin to press Jesse for more details about the evening, Jesse decides that suddenly he wants to speak to a lawyer.
For him to shut down the questioning at this point would raise suspicions. If he's innocent, what does he have to hide?
Auckland police hold a press conference to ask the public for more information.
The first thing they do is release the last known image of Grace.
Detectives provide information at the media conference that they have fears for Grace's safety at that point.
Grace's father, David, who flew in from London, begs the public to come forward with any information regarding his daughter's disappearance. The police hold another press conference. Now they give the startling news that this is no longer just a missing persons case, this is a homicide investigation.
After traveling on vacation to Auckland, New Zealand, 21-year-old Grace Millane goes on a date with 26-year-old Jesse Kempson, only to vanish without a trace. But when police bring him in for an interview, Jesse claims to have no idea where Grace could be and refuses further questioning without his lawyer present. A week after Grace's disappearance, Detective Constable Alexa Bentley announces her suspicions that she believes Grace has most likely been murdered. Her main suspect is Jesse Kempson.
On December 8th, 2018, Detective Constable Bentley coaxes Kempson back in for another interview.
This time, not surprisingly, when Jesse Kempson arrives at the police station, he's accompanied by an attorney.
Having a lawyer present obviously changes the dynamic of that interview as far as the police are concerned. Their goal is to try to elicit information from the person they're questioning, and a lawyer may choose to intervene or interrupt that conversation, and a lot of the time that line of questioning is disrupted and it doesn't go as the officers would expect.
I think in this case, Detective Bentley is trying to get Jesse to talk about his past and reveal what he's like as an individual, to get a better feel for him and to see if it in any way connects to the current case at hand.
Jesse's parents split up when he was quite young. His father remarries a woman who has children of her own, but his mother moves overseas.
After his dad remarried, Jesse is known to tell people that his mother is dead, despite there being evidence to the contrary.
The divorce is really hard on Jesse emotionally, and he starts acting out. It gets to the point where his family actually disowns him because of his constant dishonesty and thievery. They also have concerns about his mental health.
Jesse does have a good relationship with his grandfather, who really refers to him as a good kid. He was even his grandfather's best man when he remarried. But he's estranged from the rest of his family, who refer to him as a bit of a loose end.
Jesse is later arrested for impaired driving in New Zealand. He's also in trouble for disorderly conduct in Auckland and Sydney. He blames his behavior on his father, who he says also has problems with alcohol.
Jesse had originally told investigators that he worked as a salesman, but investigators have come to learn that Jesse, in fact, worked at a restaurant and as a general laborer.
With a previous criminal history established, detectives push further on details about Jesse's night with Grace.
Now that he has a lawyer present, Jesse suddenly has a lot more to say, and what a surprise. It's totally different from what he told the police the last time.
Jesse tells detectives that yes, in fact, Grace did come up to his hotel room after dinner. That's the first change in his story. In fact, he initially told them that they parted ways after dinner.
Jesse claims that the two of them went up to his room and were having a great time. They started fooling around and kissing. He says that this is when Grace started bringing up the topic of bondage and rough sex.
Jesse claims that Grace had experienced being choked and enjoyed sexually expressing herself in that way. This led to sexual intercourse, which, up until this point, Jesse claims was perfectly normal.
Jesse says that after they had sex, they talked for about 30 minutes to an hour before having sex again.
This time, Jesse claims that Grace held him around the neck and pushed him down and used him as leverage. As the sex became more aggressive, they ended up on the floor.
Jesse says that Grace allegedly asked him to hold her down, even by the throat, and have sex with her more aggressively. So he did.
Jesse claims that after they had sex, he went to have a shower, but that he fell asleep. After he woke up, he went back to the bedroom where it was dark.
Grace isn't in the room, so Jesse assumes she must have left. But in the morning when he wakes up, he finds Grace's body on the floor, blood coming from her nose.
Jesse says he tried to move her to see if she was awake, but she didn't get up. He says he then panicked and didn't know what to do.
Jesse claims that he thought about calling the police for help, but decided against it because he was afraid of how bad it might look.
Jesse Kempson insists Grace's death was an accident, caused by his consensual choking of her during their sexual encounter.
This is a huge development for the detectives. Now they have Jesse admitting that not only did he cause her death, it was an accident. However, for the family, this is the worst possible news.
And despite Jesse's claim that her death was an accident, they're immediately suspicious that he's not telling the truth.
Given everything that is now known about Jesse, Detective Constable Bentley is willing to just let him keep talking. The possibility is, within his fantasy of what happened that night, there may be factual information shared which can help this case move forward.
The murder investigation is finally underway.
After traveling on vacation to Auckland, New Zealand, 21-year-old Grace Millane went on a date with 26-year-old Jesse Kempson, only to vanish without a trace. But after initially denying any knowledge of her whereabouts to police, Kempson changes his story and claims that Grace died accidentally after he choked her during sex at her request. Detectives are suspicious of Kempson's story, but with only Jesse's testimony of Grace's death, Auckland police get to work gathering physical evidence to try and get closer to the truth of what really happened.
Well, knowing what the investigators know now, given his admission to the accidental killing, they have to be ready to ask the question, where is her body? Jesse's lawyer informs police that her body is buried near the Waitakere Dam.
The Waitakere Ranges were already of interest to police because Jesse's cell phone had pinged from that area.
A cell phone ping is a signal picked up by one cell tower from another when a person has their cell phone with them as they travel. Police take Jesse and his lawyer out to the area he claims where the body can be found.
On or around 4 p.m. on December 9th, which is now 8 days after Grace's disappearance, police locate her body off of Scenic Drive, 19 kilometers west of central Auckland.
Her body had been stuffed into a suitcase and buried.
Rigor mortis, the stiffening of the body, starts to take place within hours after death. Another thing that happens is when decomposition starts to take place, gases are produced and can cause a certain amount of bloating.
Bentley gives an emotional press conference. She says that even though the search for Grace is over, this is a very emotional, painful time for the family.
Detectives bring Grace's body to the medical examiner to try and learn more about the injuries that led to her death.
Since there were a number of bruises found and determined to be there at the time of death, we can assume that the person was in some sort of struggle. Now, whether that struggle was a consensual struggle or whether the person was actually fighting back and feared for their life is very difficult to ascertain. On autopsy, the doctor found that there was bruising to the muscle below the skin on the left side of Grace's neck. On the right side, unfortunately, due to lividity and blood pooling there, it was difficult to tell what kind of damage had been done there prior to her death.
Grace's death causes unprecedented sorrow across New Zealand. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern apologizes to the family, saying New Zealanders feel ashamed for her death.
Was this cold-blooded murder or an unfortunate case of rough sex gone too far?
In a case like this, which is clearly going to be highly publicized, Jesse Kempson uses the legal system to try to get a publication ban so that his name isn't made public until a verdict is rendered.
Kempson pleads not guilty for his role in the death of Grace Millane at his first appearance in the High Court at Auckland.
The prosecution claims that Grace was murdered by strangulation, but the defense still holds to the claim that this was just an unfortunate accident.
With Jesse's confession, There's no question that he killed Grace. The question to be answered at his trial is, was he criminally responsible?
This is a difficult matter because it's a sensitive case. The defense is claiming that this was a consensual sexual relationship, and that consent is not able to be challenged because Grace isn't here to speak for herself.
Jesse could be lying about everything, including Grace's supposed sexual preferences, but it's his word against the evidence that the police have been able to gather.
The prosecution starts their case by bringing up Kempson's sexual history.
In his interview, Jesse claimed that he was inexperienced with rough sex and the use of strangulation, and in fact that it was Grace that introduced it into their encounter.
The police call in 3 women as witnesses. These women all have experience with Jesse Kempson in bed, and they know about his preferences for choking.
One woman claimed that she was in fact comfortable with the choking and the rough sex and the strangulation, that she and Jesse had in fact had a consensual relationship. They discussed the issues prior to, and she had no problem with it. And even under cross-examination, she said she was comfortable with Jesse and she had no problem with their encounter.
But another woman tells jurors she feared she might die during a terrifying encounter in Jesse's apartment, where he choked her to the point that she almost passed out.
This woman claimed that Jesse said he liked to dominate during sex, and that she avoided him after their encounter.
Jesse had told police that he never had any experience with rough sex or choking in the bedroom before. But now here are 2 women who say differently.
With the truth of Jesse's sexual preferences out in the open, it's clear Kempson is no stranger to choking his sexual partners. But the jury still has to decide. Is he also a murderer? After meeting on a date in Auckland, New Zealand, 26-year-old Jesse Kempson is on trial, accused of murdering 21-year-old Grace Millane, and pleads not guilty. Kempson claims that Grace's death was accidental after he consensually choked her during sex at her request. But the prosecution says Kempson killed Grace when he went too far. They've also brought in other women as witnesses who say that they also experienced sexual aggression from Kempson in the past.
You know, in this particular case where the defense is claiming there was consent, criminal intent is very difficult to prove when there are no witnesses. So prosecutors have to rely on what Jesse did after the death. What did he do with Grace's body?
If an innocent person accidentally killed someone, they would call the police. But Jesse already said that he was too afraid to do that. Instead, he took the time to bury Grace's body, hide it, and then lie to the police about it.
Jurors are shown CCTV footage of Grace's final hours in Auckland to establish her time of death, and Jesse Kempson's actions afterwards.
The prosecution intends to show that between 9:40 p.m. December 1st and 1:29 a.m. December 2nd, Jesse in fact kills Grace in the hotel room.
They know this because at 1:29 a.m., Jesse Kempson's behavior changes. He starts searching the internet on his cell phone.
Jesse searches the internet for Waitakere Ranges, where Grace's body is ultimately found. He also conducted searches for terms like the hottest fire. He was obviously looking for ways in which to dispose of the body. But then over the next 10 minutes or so, he accesses various pornographic websites. And this isn't typical behavior for someone who has a dead woman lying on their floor, particularly if you're responsible for their death. Then, between 1:46 and 1:49 a.m., he actually takes 8 photographs of Grace's body in an intimate position.
Between 2:08 and 2:24 a.m., Jesse Kempson looks at more pornographic material on his cell phone. At 6 a.m., Jesse does an internet search for car hire Auckland, and then a search for large bags near me.
Then he does an internet search for the term rigor mortis. Then just before 8 a.m., he starts sending messages to other women he's met online. In fact, asking them how their morning is. He sends identical messages to both women.
Then he continues searching for carpet cleaner, rug doctor, and large bags.
He also searches for the term time in London, which the prosecution says is evidence that he knew Grace's family would be looking for.
Later that day, Jesse actually goes on another date with a woman and tells her the story about a friend of his that got charged with manslaughter in a consensual strangling gone wrong. This doesn't sound like the actions of an innocent man. This sounds like a sociopath.
This could be a guilty conscience, or it could be bragging.
Kempson never takes a witness stand in his own defense.
In closing statements, the Crown prosecutor said that Grace's death is a senseless murder, while the defense still maintains that it was a tragic accident.
In the end, the jury rejects Kempson's version of events, returning a guilty verdict to the charge of murder and the death of Grace Millane.
The injury he caused to her was severe enough that he ought to have known that it could have caused her death. He was found reckless in causing her death.
Even if Grace did give consent, Jesse has shown no remorse.
Grace's family knows that there is some level of justice which brings a little bit of closure in this horrible incident.
If Grace had ever known about his past history, she wouldn't have consented to going on a date with him. And in romantic relationships, consent is everything.
So sometimes when a person starts out on that road where they enjoy a deviant behavior, it has to escalate in order for them to maintain any kind of satisfaction from it.
However tragic this event was, Grace's death does not define her. Her legacy is how many people love and miss her, and her adventurous spirit.
Jesse Kempson is sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years for the murder of Grace Millane.